Oh, hey there, neighbor. How's it going? Just out here grilling up some hot takes. Hit that like button. Let's go. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you from the Draft.com studios. I've got the grill put away because all of my hot takes for the AFC are now cooked up and ready to roll in this episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Before we jump into all of that information, though, don't forget the Fantasy Headliners draft guide is only $19.99 at thefantasyheadliners.com right now. If you still have a draft that you're going to be doing this week, make sure you go get yours. Only $19.99, more than 500 pages of pure fantasy football fire. Make sure that you get yours. Let's get you prepared for your draft so you can win yourself a fantasy championship. The Fantasy Headliners draft guide at thefantasyheadliners.com. Let's get rolling, though. We got to talk about AFC hot takes. All right, before we jump into the Baltimore Ravens, just a quick disclaimer like I did on the NFC episode. Keep in mind, these aren't predictions. These aren't even really bold predictions. These are hot takes. These are things that more than likely will not come true. For them to come true, everything is going to have to go perfect for said player. So again, maybe some things to come true. Maybe it's 50-50, maybe a little bit higher. But more than likely, these things are not going to happen. But keep in mind, we're just having some fun with these episodes. We've been churning out off-season content all off-season long. It's time to get into the nitty-gritty dirty of the fantasy football season. And I said, you know what, Jake? These last couple of episodes that we do here before the off-season is over, I just want to have some fun with them. Spit out some hot takes, talk a little bit of fantasy football. So all of your comments that you have for me, if you want to call me names or tell me how ridiculous I am, just save it. I don't care. These are fun episodes. None of this is expected to happen. We're just talking about some hot takes. So with the Baltimore Ravens, let's start off with, we're going to turn the spicy meter down a little bit. And this one only is just Mark Ingram is going to be a running back one. That's what this hot take is. Now, right after he was signed with the Baltimore Ravens, a lot of people out there were like, oh, running back one, absolutely. And some of that has cooled a little bit. And one of those reasons is Justice Hill, because Justice Hill has been playing so well this preseason. And on the Fantasy Headliners, we're big fans of Justice Hill. So we're here for that breakout. However, Mark Ingram is going to a team that is, by all accounts, a team that is going to run the ball a lot. They're going to be running the ball with Lamar Jackson a lot, with Ingram a lot. Justice Hill's probably going to see a little bit of work in the passing game. You've still got a couple of other guys there, Kenneth Dixon, Gus Edwards. But Ingram was brought in for a purpose, and that's to run the football and run the football a lot. The one thing that will have to happen, Lamar Jackson is going to have a big step forward as a passer. I like Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to develop into a good NFL quarterback. But you have a threat with his legs. You have a threat through the air. You have Mark Ingram as well. If Mark Ingram can get the same kind of workload that he got while he was in New Orleans with the Saints, which is it really out of the question that he would? He's going to have to, again, be super efficient. But running back one numbers wouldn't be out of the question. More than likely, he'll be a safe running back too. But you never know what could happen. That upside could come out at any point in time this season. All right, so for my second hot take, this is going to be for the Buffalo Bills, and John Brown is going to have 10 or more touchdowns this season. Now, the one thing about John Brown is he landed in a pretty good situation. Now, obviously, he killed some of the value that we thought Robert Foster was going to have. They also have Cole Beasley there as well. They have Zay Jones, so they have some wide receivers. But the one thing that we can all agree on that Josh Allen does well is throw the deep ball. Now, he's going to have to be more accurate with his passes. He's going to have to be more accurate with his short yardage to mid yardage accuracy in order to get John Brown to release and get down the field. He's going to have to be a little bit better with those things. But if he is, and if John Brown has the opportunity to score some touchdowns this year, he could have some really big plays, and he could end up having a lot of touchdowns. I got a couple of notes here for you on this one. Last year, John Brown was tied for fourth in the NFL with 17 yards per reception, so we know he can make those big plays. But this was a really interesting stat that I found as well. He was one of only two players in 2018 with more than 15 yards per reception, but less than 8 yards per target. So he had to work after the catch quite a bit. Obviously, after he was in Baltimore last year, the before-mentioned Baltimore Ravens, and when Lamar Jackson took over, he just disappeared really, but he was a wide receiver too. Prior to that, there could be some big time TDs coming up for him. There could be some big time plays. And if he were to score more than 10 touchdowns or 10 or more touchdowns, it might be a little bit of a hot take, but it could be possible as well. For my next hot take, this is going to be for the Cincinnati Bengals. And talking with a rational tone for a second, we've had some worries on this channel about Joe Mixon's offensive line. Now, again, I love Joe Mixon. I think he's an excellent football player. I've talked about him a lot this season until he had injuries on the offensive line. Now we're talking rational, back to hot takes where we're a little irrational. And with all of that being said, what if the offensive line just doesn't end up being that bad or just as worse as last year? And if it's as bad as it was last year, Mixon was still able to be a running back one. So what could change this year? Well, Zach Taylor, who used to be with the Los Angeles Rams, learning under Sean McVay, what if he brings a lot of that same game plan to Cincinnati? We've already heard that here in the preseason and training camp, that a lot of what they do on offense could end up looking like what the Rams have done. Well, the one thing about the Los Angeles Rams, they've had a guy by the name of Todd Gurley, who's been an absolute stud at running back because of his work in the pass game and the run game. What if Zach Taylor looks at Joe Mixon and says, you're going to be our Todd Gurley. We have injuries right now that we have to deal with. You're going to be the guy this offense is going to flow through you. So if all that is said, what I'm going to say is that he will be the running back one in 2019. That's my hot take for the Cincinnati Bengals, that Joe Mixon is unaffected by the offensive line injuries and retirement, that Zach Taylor looks at him and uses him in a way that Todd Gurley was used with the Los Angeles Rams, that we see the Cincinnati Bengals transfer what the Los Angeles Rams have done into their offense. Andy Dalton ends up being a decent quarterback this year. A.J. Green comes back healthy. Tyler Boyd is there and healthy as well. Tyler Eifert stays healthy. All these things happen. Joe Mixon, running back one, the running back one in 2019. For the Cleveland Browns, we've talked about them a lot this offseason. The one thing that we have continuously told you, Headliner Nation, is do not pass on the Browns offense because you're worried about who's going to get the football. Trust us, Baker Mayfield is going to get the football to plenty of people. So with that being said, what could happen in 2019? Well, the Cleveland Browns are going to come out and they are just going to destroy the NFL with a high-powered offense that is going to score a ton of touchdowns and is going to look like a light version, maybe, of what the Kansas City Chiefs were last year. Now, I'm not comparing the two or saying that Baker Mayfield is Patrick Mahomes. Baker Mayfield is going to be very, very good, but they have a lot of weapons. They have a really, really good offense. So if they are the light version of the Kansas City Chiefs, what do we see? Well, we see Nick Chubb is the running back one. We see Baker Mayfield as the QB1, and we see Odell Beckham Jr. as the wide receiver one. That's right. Those three guys are all going to finish at the top of their position. That is my hot take for the Cleveland Browns. This offense is going to run. They're going to gun. They're going to score a ton of points. They're going to put up a ton of yards. And at the end of the season, you're going to be glad that you bought into the Cleveland Browns offense. For the Denver Broncos, now this is going to take a lot of work on the ground because my hot take for the Denver Broncos is going to be that Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay both finish as a running back too. Probably that one's a little bit, again, turning down that spicy meter just a little bit. And when we look at this offense, we know Royce Freeman is going to have a little bit better time this season. He's going to be a little bit more productive. This offense isn't going to be nearly as vanilla as it was last season. He's going to have that opportunity. Is he going to get enough opportunities to finish as a running back too? A lot of perfect things are going to have to happen. They're going to have to run the ball a lot. This is going to have to be an offense that goes through the running backs. Will that happen? Probably not with Joe Flacco. But again, if everything goes right and this team looks at the running backs and they say, you're the guys that are going to win us football games, Royce Freeman, Phillip Lindsay, running back twos in 2019. All right, so I'm going to double down here a little bit. If you watched one of my previous episodes, the one that came out a couple of days ago, updating you on what was going on in the preseason and training camp, I talked about Duke Johnson. If you're a part of Headliner Nation and you've been around, you know that we love Duke Johnson heading into this season. So let me double down with this hot take. Not only am I going to say Duke Johnson is a running back one in 2019, but he is the top 5 running back. Now, right now in our rankings, we have him as a high-end running back 2 in PPR formats. But my hot take is in PPR leagues, he's a top 5 running back in 2019. Now, I've heard a lot of what you guys have said. I have heard you say he can't keep up with it. He's not good enough. He doesn't have the size. He's not an every down back. He can't handle the workload. I need to just remind you of a couple things. Number one, the Cleveland Browns have ruined Duke Johnson. This was a guy that a couple of years ago, everybody was excited for. We thought that this guy was going to be a big-time running back. We thought he was going to beat Isaiah Crowell out and that he was going to become the main guy there. They ended up drafting Nick Chubb, and then all of a sudden, he doesn't. But if you don't think he can handle the workload, keep in mind that over his final 2 seasons in college football, he had 18.4 carries a game. He's also never missed an NFL game. So to tell me that he can't handle the workload, the guy's over 210 pounds. He can handle the workload. If you want to know more about him, go back to a video from a couple of days ago when I talked about preseason updates. It's got the thumbnail on it. That is Duke Johnson. I'm going to give you some other information. Also throwing out there his fantasy points per touch, lots of good things. But if you want some more in-depth information on why we think he's going to be really good this year, go to that video. But my hot take for the Houston Texans this season is that he's a top 5 running back in PPR leagues. For the Indianapolis Colts fans, if you're still getting over the shock of Andrew Luck retiring, well, maybe take a step back and just think, you know what, maybe this team is still good enough to make a run in 2019. I know a lot of people don't love Jacoby Brissett, but they're looking at a Jacoby Brissett in 2017 that just wasn't prepared to lead a football team because he was traded for just days before the start of the NFL regular season and then was expected to come out and be their quarterback one. Yeah, it was an up and down season, but now he's been with the team for a few years, okay? He's probably feeling a few years. I don't want to say a few years, a couple of years now. He's got a little bit better connection with his wide receivers. He's got a very good offensive line. Last time he had a crappy offensive line. Now he has one of the best in the league. He has more weapons as well this time. Not only does he have T.Y. Hilton, but he has Doyle and Ebron. He has Paris Campbell. He has Devin Funchess as well, even though it's hashtag never Funchess. He can still be a decoy for some people. And they've got a lot better running game. They've got Marlon Mack. They've got Nyheim Hines. So he's got a lot more weapons and a lot better offense around him than what he did in 2017. Now, do I think he's going to be a guy that's going to light the world on fire like Andrew Luck? Absolutely not. He's probably a QB2. However, with that being said, my hot take is that none of these things matter and that Jacoby Brissett is going to be a quarterback one in 2019. He's going to finish within the top 12 in fantasy points at the QB position. This offense is going to function well, and even though they're not going to score at the type of pace they saw last season, Jacoby Brissett is going to do just enough to land within the top 12 of quarterbacks in fantasy points because of the difference between 2017 and now. One person that I've started to slowly buy into a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more is Leonard Fournette. I haven't been a huge fan of his since he's entered the league, but you know what? I'm going to take a shot on him this season. Because with Jacksonville, he's going to be a guy that could be a workhorse back. If he stays on the field all season long, Leonard Fournette is a top 5 running back. And that's going to be my hot take for 2019 for the Jaguars, is that he is a top 5 running back. Now, is he going to play all 16 games? Probably not. Can we get 14 out of him? Hopefully. But the problem the last couple of years is he hasn't been very efficient with his runs under 4 yards per carry. He's had some injury issues. He seems to be banged up every week. But if he stays healthy, increases his efficiency, and most importantly, Nick Foles shows up and becomes the quarterback that the Jaguars have so desperately been looking for the last few years, then maybe there's something happening with this offense. D.D. Westbrook breaks out. Maybe Keelan Cole is ready to go this season and has the breakout year that we thought was going to happen last year. Keep an eye on Leonard Fournette, top 5 quarterback. My hot take for the Jaguars in 2019. How do you come up with a hot take for a team that has such high expectations? Well, it's really hard to do for the Kansas City Chiefs. They have expectations literally so high that you can't come up with a hot take above that because, a hot take basically would have been what their offense was heading into last season. Did anyone see Patrick Mahomes being the number 1 overall quarterback? No. Did anyone see Kareem Hunt having that kind of an explosive year before he ended up being released? Some people did. but a lot of people thought that he might regress a little bit. Travis Kelce was a star. Tyreek Hill was a star on the field. There's a lot of different things that happens with this offense. If I had to go one hot take, it's that at some point this year, Damian Williams loses his job to Darwin Thompson, and Darwin Thompson on a point per game basis is a running back one. Maybe not that much of a hot take, maybe more of a bold prediction because it's something that could happen. And we love Darwin Thompson here on the Fantasy Headliners. So if that were to happen, I'd be super pumped about it. But again, hard to come up with a hot take for a team that has such high expectations anyway. For the Los Angeles Chargers, my hot take for them is that Austin Eckler in PPR leagues finishes as a running back one. Now, that would have to be Melvin Gordon missing the entire year. We think he comes back at some point, maybe midseason around week 10, maybe a little bit later than midseason around week 10 or something like that. But what if he doesn't? If he doesn't, maybe Austin Eckler can be comparable to what James White was last season for the New England Patriots. In PPR leagues, James White was a running back one. Could Austin Eckler do it? It's very possible. Now, Justin Jackson would have to take a step backwards and really be just more of a complimentary guy, and Austin Eckler would need to get more volume than what he did last year, but that could very well happen. And in PPR leagues, if Austin Eckler performs in the passing game the way he did last year, it's very possible that he could reach a running back one status if Melvin Gordon misses all season long. On a high-risk, high-reward episode a couple of weeks ago, I talked about Kenny Stills and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, Kenny Stills seems to be on the way out the door. The Dolphins have basically shown their hand that they are not trying to win any football games this year. But if Kenny Stills doesn't get traded, then my hot take is that he scores at least 10 touchdowns this season. Again, hot take here. He would have to stay on the team. That's looking less and less likely right now. But last year, Ryan Fitzpatrick was a deep ball master, throwing deep to Godwin or Evans. The deep threat here is going to be Kenny Stills. But if you want to hear more about why this tandem could put up some big numbers if they were to work together this year, go back to that episode, Big Risk, Big Reward. Marvin Jones is on the thumbnail of that. It's from a couple of weeks ago, and I go way more in depth on that duo. But again, my hot take, Kenny Stills scores 10 touchdowns. For the New England Patriots, Josh Gordon is back. My hot take, Josh Gordon finishes the season as a wide receiver one. Now, does it seem out of the question? I don't think so, because Julian Edelman, when he came back last year, he was a wide receiver one. In terms of points per game, from the time he came back from his suspension to the very end of the season, on a points per game basis, he was a wide receiver one. So we know Tom Brady could still support a wide receiver one, even when they shifted to more of a focus on the run game last year. Now, Josh Gordon is probably going to have to find the end zone a little bit more than often, and he's going to have to probably out-target Julian Edelman, which would seem difficult to do. I mean, he's missed a lot of time over the last couple of years. He did get 11 or 12 games in last season, so it's probably a little far-fetched. But if he comes back, he's already been in this offense. He's already worked with Tom Brady. He knows what he's getting into. If he can stay on the field for 16 games, have some of those big plays, there's a chance that he could finish as a top 12 wide receiver in 2019. For the New York Jets, my hot take is that Jamison Crowder has 100 receptions in 2019. Now, there was a report a couple of weeks ago that said that he could possibly reach that number. It's a hot take, though. It's going to take a lot for that to happen. But they have a very good offense that could work to Crowder's abilities playing out of the slot. Because you have guys who can go deep. You have Quincy Enunwa, and you also have Robbie Anderson. Both of those guys can stretch the field on both sides of the field and really pull some defenders out of the box down the field. Now you also have Le'Veon Bell in the backfield, right? And Ty Montgomery. Both of those guys are really good receivers out of the backfield. Linebackers, they'll have to keep their eye on those guys. They can't let them get away, right? And you also have a guy like Chris Herndon who could end up being on the field as well. If Chris Herndon's on the field, guys are going to have to keep an eye on him as well. Well, that's where Jamison Crowder comes into play with some mismatches there in the slot, because if he can get himself some open field in the middle of the field, which again, if you've got defenders pulling back and you've got linebackers pulling in to keep an eye on those guys in the backfield, you do that, you stretch those two out, and right in between there is a lot of room for Jamison Crowder to be in, to get open. Sam Darnold can hit him, and then now we're looking at a team that has a lot of upside, and we're looking at a wide receiver that has 100 receptions. Hot take, yes. Possible, we'll see. For the Oakland Raiders in 2019, what can we expect? Well, now that Antonio Brown has finally picked his helmet and he's headed back out to the field, we have a good idea of what the offense around Derek Carr is going to look like. Now, for a second, let's just imagine that everything with the Oakland Raiders offense turns out perfect. Josh Jacobs is everything that they hoped he would be. The offensive line gets much better. Tyrell Williams, he ends up playing well. Antonio Brown plays well. Darren Waller shows up. He's a guy that we've had. He's a guy that we've had as a sleeper, including Hunter Renfrow, another sleeper that we've had a lot on this team. With all that being said, if it happens, Derek Carr is a top 10 quarterback in 2019. So many weapons. He's got guys that can win on the intermediate routes. He's got guys that can win all over the place, like Antonio Brown. Tyrell Williams can stretch the field. Offensive line, again, if it's better. And Josh Jacobs, if he ends up being the running back that they hoped he was, then at that point, you've got a really well-balanced offense, and you got a guy in John Gruden that can work the offense well. A lot of things will have to happen. More than likely, you're looking at Derek Carr as a low-end quarterback too, but with that being said, he also has that upside to be a quarterback one if all those things go right. There were some concerns at the end of last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers and James Conner that he just couldn't handle the type of workload that they were trying to give him. Broke down a little bit, had some issues at the end of the season, and we saw Jalen Samuels jump in. Well, here's the thing with Jalen Samuels. Let's say James Conner does have some more issues. Jalen Samuels has to be used a lot more often. But what if they get Jalen Samuels involved in the passing game, maybe working out of the slot, maybe working from some different looks? Well, if all that were to happen in PPR leagues, Jalen Samuels could be a running back too in 2019. This is a team that will probably have to take a step back passing the ball. They threw so much last season. I don't see how they could keep it up. But again, a lot of things would have to go right for Jalen Samuels, including James Conner having some health issues. Now, we don't want to wish that on James Conner. I'm a big fan of James Conner. I love his story, and I've come around to him more and more this offseason. And when my final rankings are released, I think we're going to see a bigger jump for James Conner than what I had anticipated. But again, this is a hot takes episode, so we're looking at different angles. So with that being said, maybe he can't stay on the field all year long. Maybe they try to limit his workload. Jalen Samuel sees a whole lot of looks, and in PPR leagues, he gets more than enough receptions to vault him into a running back 2 status. My final hot take for this episode is for the Tennessee Titans. And let's say that Ryan Tannehill comes in and steals that job from Marcus Mariota. Maybe Marcus Mariota just has some issues to begin the season, isn't nearly as consistent as they want. They throw Ryan Tannehill out there. If that happens on this hot take, Ryan Tannehill finishes as a quarterback 2. Derrick Henry finishes as a high-end running back 2. And Corey Davis, he finishes as a wide receiver 2. That's right. The offense is more consistent. The offense gets more plays in. The offense scores more points. And with all that being said, these players become viable fantasy options. And to just throw that in there in PPR leagues, Adam Humphries, he's a wide receiver 3 as well. So that's my hot take for the Tennessee Titans. And those are my hot takes for the AFC Conference. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Again, just another fun episode, throwing some different stuff out there, some what ifs, some hot takes, just to have some fun here in the last couple of episodes heading into the regular season. Make sure, though, you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If you're new to Headliner Nation, let us know in the comments below. And everyone that's already in Headliner Nation, if you see someone say, yep, I just subscribed, welcome them to the channel just like we will. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Headliner Nation, have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one. That's right. What could be a hot take for the Steelers? What could be a hot take for the Steelers? Does the offensive Jake, you just sent me one of your infamous messages that says Kyle, and now I have to be like, what do you need, Jake? What is it?